Level 1. This is the reason you obey thousands of rules every day that were never written down. Most of the choices you make aren't guided by laws. They're shaped by invisible rules that almost everyone follows automatically, which means you're following many of them without even noticing. Take something as ordinary as riding an elevator. You face the door because everyone else does, not because a law requires it. The moment someone turns to face everyone instead, the room feels uncomfortable long before anybody speaks. The same thing happens when you wait in line. No police officer keeps people in place, yet anyone who cuts ahead usually receives disapproving looks because everyone expects the same unwritten rule to be respected. These expectations are called social norms. You aren't born knowing them, and most people are never formally taught them. Instead, you absorb them simply by watching the people around you. Psychologist Robert Cialdini explains that some norms influence you because you see other people doing something, while others influence you because you believe other people approve of it. Your brain constantly watches for both, quietly adjusting your behavior to match what seems normal. That sounds simple, but those invisible rules shape far more than elevators and waiting in line. Level 2. Those everyday habits become much more interesting once you realize they existed long before written laws. Developmental psychologist Michael Tomasello argues that one of humanity's greatest strengths is cooperating with complete strangers. People often work together, not because they're afraid of punishment, but because they believe people like us do this. Economist Douglas North described institutions as the rules of the game in a society. Some are written laws, while many survive as customs, traditions, and shared expectations that quietly guide everyday behavior. Long before modern governments existed, communities already relied on invisible rules about trust, fairness, sharing, and cooperation. Those expectations helped groups survive. Around 1754 BCE, the Code of Hammurabi became one of the earliest written legal codes. Even then, written laws covered only part of daily life because most behavior still depended on customs that everyone understood. The same thing happens today. You don't need a law telling you to stay quiet in a library or reminding you how to dress for different situations because people around you naturally reinforce those expectations. That pressure is stronger than most people realize. Sometimes people ignore what they know is true simply because everyone around them appears to agree on something else. Level 3. Scientists eventually measured just how powerful that pressure can be. In 1951, psychologist Solomon Asch carried out one of psychology's best-known experiments. Participants compared simple lines with obvious correct answers, yet everyone else in the room intentionally chose the wrong one. About 75% of participants agreed with the group at least once, even though they knew the answer was wrong. Across the critical trials, the average conformity rate reached about 37%. Nobody threatened them or forced them. Simply watching everyone else agree often changed what they said out loud. A few years later, Stanley Milgram examined obedience instead of conformity. Participants believed they were delivering increasingly painful electric shocks because an authority figure instructed them to continue, even though no real shocks were actually delivered. In the original experiment, about 65% continued to the maximum voltage. The study later sparked ethical debates, and researchers now place greater emphasis on authority, social context, and the experimental setting rather than simple blind obedience. Together, these experiments reveal something important. The strongest force shaping your behavior often isn't fear, and that same invisible force also gives value to something you carry almost every day. Level 4. That invisible force even gives value to money. Historian Yuval Noah Harari described money as the most universal and most efficient system of mutual trust ever devised. A banknote isn't valuable because of the paper itself. It has value because millions of people collectively agree that it does. The same invisible cooperation keeps traffic moving. Drivers stay in their lanes, stop at red lights, and signal before turning, because predictable behavior benefits everyone, even when no police officer is nearby. Language works in a similar way. Most people never memorize every grammar rule they use, yet children largely learn language through exposure, while researchers continue debating exactly how language develops. Behavioral economists Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein showed in Nudge that changing a default choice can quietly influence decisions. Organ donation systems illustrate that idea, although participation also depends on culture, healthcare systems, and legal design. Invisible rules rarely rely on punishment. More often, they simply make one option feel normal. Then one experiment challenged what many people expected about human behavior. Level 5. That final discovery isn't about selfishness, it's about trust. In 2019, researchers carried out one of the largest lost wallet experiments ever conducted, deliberately placing more than 17,000 wallets across 355 cities in 40 countries. Most people expected wallets containing money to disappear more often. Instead, wallets with money were generally more likely to be returned than empty ones, challenging common assumptions about human behavior. The finding suggests that invisible social norms like honesty can strongly influence people's actions, even when nobody appears to be watching. Not every invisible rule produces positive outcomes. The broken windows theory, introduced in 1982 by James Q. Wilson and George L. Kelling, argued that visible disorder encourages more disorder. While the idea shaped policing for years, many criminologists later argued the evidence remained mixed and criticized the social costs associated with its application. Research into invisible rules continues across psychology, sociology, economics, and anthropology. Digital platforms now create new social norms through recommendation systems, reputation systems, and community guidelines, while psychologists continue re-examining classic experiments to better understand how context shapes behavior. The answer to the opening question is simple. Humans don't build societies with laws alone. We build them with shared expectations that quietly influence millions of decisions every day. Every line you wait in, every conversation you adjust, every traffic signal you trust, and every banknote you accept works because millions of other people accept those same invisible rules. They aren't hidden because they're secret. They disappear into the background because they've become so ordinary that you rarely notice them. Once you do, you begin seeing them almost everywhere.